When Stephen first talked to me about AI, it was very, very secretive, no script, very little information. It was described as kind of a search for love using all of the tools that the effects world might offer, which of course piques my curiosity. Mostly I would approach him as a director. And I very much test and photograph and go to him and just visually get a reaction from him. That was my whole approach on AI. I didn't have a list of things I was going to do. We would talk about Flesh Fair. We would talk about the excavation pit. We would talk about the moon ship. We would talk about, and I'd see some pictures, and I would start building. And I would start showing Stephen. And Stephen would say, more, less, yeah, that's perfect. And I'd say, let me show you a test. And I probably pretty much went through the whole movie showing him either digital stills or digital video of what I was doing, so that his options remained open in what he was going to do. And the one great thing about working with Stephen is I always feel like all of my efforts go on the screen. In Flesh Fair, Stephen came up with this idea that we would have a couple of cannons. And we had much like a ring, like a Colosseum affair, if you will. And out of the cannons have to shoot two people who travel 50 yards, who go through a ring, who catch on fire, and then hit 12-foot spinning metal blades, bust up into pieces, and land on stage where this heavy metal group Ministry is playing.
Yes, we're lighting the ring. And
I told him just one day as a kind of a lark that I thought we could do this live action. And we did. Stan built some robots, some dummies for us that were fiberglass. And we purposely put very little insides in them. And we put them on a cable and used a ratchet and pulled them out of the cannon, pulled them through the ring, trailing a wire, had suits and clothes made out of flash paper that would ignite.
We gotta get the arms on there.
Then literally had a burning projectile that flew into spinning metal blades that busted up into hundreds of pieces and flew all over. And we had to do this inside a ring with 800 extras and a live playing band on stage. So just from a standpoint of danger, I had to test it.
Sir, ready?
I had to get the fire department involved. Tell them what kind of a safety circle we needed.
I am the body electric.
Talk to the band, talk to the actors.
Okay, this shot right here features all of you.
Talk to everybody, tell them where they could be. And really not miss. And we got through the whole thing without any kind of a hazard. Rouge City was a good example of how working with the art department pays off. I needed a track down the center of the street in Rouge City, and Rick was nice enough to put a line down the center, which meant before we built the set, I was able to build in a track with an endless cable that would pull a motion base. On top of that motion base, we hand-assembled the amphibicopter, which is a helicopter which flies above land and underwater. So we could travel a motion base and have a spinning helicopter and travel it the whole length of Rouge City with people in it, with extras in it, and not run off the track or not hit anybody. We could predictably make the move. We knew exactly where it was going to go, even though it looked like it was out of control. We knew where it would start, where it would stop, how many turns it would take. We could put the camera in it. We could photograph it going by. And the whole thing weighed about 6,000 pounds.
Stay clear, please. Okay, here we go.
So you don't want to hit anything, you don't want to run into anything, and you certainly don't want to go past your stops and run into the stage wall. So just that by itself was just another whole section of the film that we had to take under our wing and do. we'll do, we'll paint out the motion base, and you'll have a flying helicopter that's 6 feet off the ground that flies through a group of people, and it's all there for real. So it's about as much as what you take out of the film as what you put into the film.
Destination
Manhattan.
In the ice excavation scene, we went through about 8 tons of real ice a day. One of the things that we didn't want to settle for was a fake look. So everything had to be dripping, everything had to be wet, everything had to, and this is a key part of the movie where the Blue Fairy exists. So it was made to look as though literally it had been there for thousands of years, and the set itself was really constructed and then covered with real ice. Every morning, 3 hours before shooting, real ice was brought in so that it would melt realistically. And every time it got down to a point where it wasn't quite right, we would add more. And you don't see that very often. Most people would opt to use fake ice. But in this case, it's such an important part of the movie, and the look is so different that we went to the extent of really doing it for real. The great thing about AI is I don't think that there's one effect in that movie that's not cutting edge. I think that everything had to be so fit into the story. And we took it to a level in Rouge City on our blue screen stage where there's work that has never been done before. It is beyond cutting edge. It just goes way beyond anything you've ever seen. It will not be a traditionally made movie, and it will not look traditional.
When you become a real boy, remember me to the ladies when you grow up.
And I think it will hold up for a long time.
I am.
Good. Very nice. That was a great reading. In Stanley's story of AI, mechaniques, mechanical simulations of human beings are designed according to the tasks that they are built to perform. There are au pair or nanny mechas.
I have many good references.
There are chef mechas. Jude Law plays a lover mecha named Gigolo Joe.
I know all about women.
Mechas are basically made to, in a sense, ease the burden of humans' lives, at the same time putting many humans out of work and creating a kind of class struggle. But there are many different kinds of robots in AI, a lot of them worse for wear because of the fact that they've been abandoned by their owners, turned loose. And once these robots are turned loose, they lose their operating license. And once they have no operating license, it is open season for the characters like Lord Johnson Johnson, whose job it is to gather up all the garbage, all the antique iron, as he puts it, of robots that have been turned out, castaways, and to retrieve them and bring them to these large kind of event carnivals called flesh fairs, where they tear the robots apart for the general amusement of the human being. And David, of course, and Gigolo Joe are always on the run, trying not to get caught by those who are snatching unlicensed robots and putting them in the flesh fairs.
They made us too smart, too quick, and too many. We are suffering for the mistakes they made because when the end comes, all that will be left is us.
Robot design started about 4 months before production. Every robot is different, and Stephen was very specific about this. In the very beginning, he said, you know, let your imaginations go, and the design concepts were very, very extreme. but there was always an element of humanity in every robot, and Stephen wanted to hold on to that humanity of the artificial intelligent world.
I'm a custom job. 75 years ago, I was Time Magazine's Mecca of the Year.
So our robots range from completely mechanical robots to makeup designs that we created here for actors wearing heavy prosthetics.
My time? Is it up already?
In the case of like the gardener, which is a completely animatronic puppet, there would be no human component that would play part of that role. It was decided early on that this would just be a puppet, and that there wouldn't be a human component, there wouldn't be a CG computer-generated version of this to augment performance and things like that.
I still work, don't I? I can work in the dark, but my lamp is broken.
So we pretty much knew on the outset, character by character, how much of their performance would be based on a puppet.
Could you kind of shoot me over the propeller thing?
How much would be based on an actor playing that robot, or how much would be created later on by ILM as a computer-generated character.
There's a robot, the welder, who's played by Dave Smith, who is an amputee and a friend of mine, who is one of the principals in an organization called Stuntsability, where the actors with disabilities are used there for making their disabilities abilities. And so here is a robot that one of his arms is a welding tool. And it's perfect to be able to use, an amputee in a situation like that. There were many amputees used in all of the designs, and with that, some of the most inspiring actors on the set were the various amputees who acted as robots.
Flesh Fair was, for the robots, their first major scene. It was 16 weeks into the build, and we had 20-some puppets that we knew would be working for 1 week straight. We had taken great care in making sure that in the cage sequence and for all the torture devices that we worked through with the art department and Michael Lantier's crew, the special effects crew, to make sure that we could operate all of these characters. The cage sequence was the major scene that we knew that all of our robots would be working in simultaneously. In the cage, we had the full range of characters, from actors performing under prosthetic makeups. We had amputees wearing special prostheses that we made for them so that they could move around and still look like their limbs were falling apart.
History repeats itself.
There is an homage to Stan in it. The guys here just couldn't get away without doing it. They insisted, so the insecurity guard, which is a robot that I love, but not just because he was, but I just loved the robot. The design of him is based on me.
We had fully animatronic puppets, cable puppets, rod puppets, hydraulic puppets, all radio controlled and rod puppeteered. The cage itself was built over a 6-foot pit that they dug into the floor of the Spruce Goose Dome. While there were 20-some performers and puppets up above, there were 20 to 25 puppeteers right underneath them doing all the movement on cable controllers. We had another 20 puppeteers outside with radios. A total of 46 puppeteers and technicians were required for the Flesh Fair sequence, where all of our robots would be working simultaneously. It was a massive undertaking to get them all up and running and performing to camera, all in the same shots.
Teddy, this is David.
Hello, Teddy.
Hello, David.
We designed our first Teddy just as a prototype, what he would look like, showed him to Stephen. Stephen had his comments. We went back and for a couple weeks did some redesigning, adding different characters of color and light and structure to give Teddy a very relatable appearance, yet a certain uniqueness for the story. Then we got into the technical aspect of how is he going to work. How are we going to do as much as we can live, which is always the scenario. We knew going in that we weren't going to be able to do everything Teddy does with a live teddy bear. Again, it was going to be this hopefully seamless blend between live action and the CG world. There will be some incredible CG Teddy work in AI. But from a live action standpoint, we wanted to be able to do as much as we possibly could do.
I'll break, David.
We did a lot of testing as we were going along building Teddy. We built basically a very simple rod bear to begin with, just muslin and foam, and jointed it just to see what the best movement would be, and how easy or difficult it would be to get different body positions, the different gait of his walk whilst he's doing it. And it kind of progressed gradually from there, and we learned a lot just doing very simple tests to make sure that everything worked well before you go into production on what the real bear would be, or any puppet. There were 6 puppeteers to perform Teddy, for the arms, the head, the body, the legs, facial features. Usually we use cables to control the lips, but on this show we decided to use paddles, which would make the lips move a little faster and get the more pronunciation in the words that we needed.
You will break.
It was probably the most difficult puppet that I've ever worked with, or in fact any of the other guys have either, just because we had to take this character all the way through the movie. We did look at videos of Winnie the Pooh and other bears in film history to get the different types of walks that were available. Eventually, it kind of boiled down to what I could actually perform in the suit. We had a rig where I would be attached to Teddy. He would be in front of me about 3 foot, and my feet are connected to his feet. It was kind of like skiing almost.
What do we do?
We run now.
So I went over and recorded all my lines totally out of any context. I had no idea where it fit in the context of the story, and which is part of the reason why I'm on the set every day, because we have the lines and the puppeteers have been able to work with the lines.
Be careful, David. This is not a toy.
And they had to have that in order to really learn how to make the face look real. But then Stephen will say, well, when you recorded it, it was too much emphasis this way, or it wasn't conspiratorial enough, or whatever, and we'll redo them right on the set. And they'll feed it into the computer.
And then we could just basically press a button, and Teddy would perform the dialogue that Jack had given us.
Be careful, David. This is not a toy.
Jack gave a lot to Teddy's performance just through his voice. Just the inflections that he had really helped us so that we could actually give different body movement to help sell that piece of dialogue that Stephen had.
He had a series of expression heads that would range from his hero head, which within itself would reach many, many ranges of expression because there were 24 servos operating that little head. So he had a good range of expression just in the hero head itself. Then we had a happy head, which, you know, had a broader smile. We had a sad head. We had a concerned head, you know, a curmudgeon face. We had these various expression heads, and each of them were interchangeable with the hero body. Then we also had a self-contained Teddy, where everything was self-contained and could be carried around, and also had a limited amount of performance, body movement and arm movement, and Haley Joel could carry the Teddy around with him. Teddy literally worked every day of a 67-day shooting schedule. That's unheard of with a robotic or animatronic.
I am not a toy.
Once you've had a lover robot, you'll never want a real man again.
Gigolo Joe was, from a design concept, again, he was one of the stars, and the design concept of him was a very, very, very difficult one for us to nail.
When we were developing Jude's character, we did a lot of testing. We were trying to use a product called silicone, which has recently been used quite successfully in a couple of other films, and we wanted to develop a really great look for Jude using the silicone because it would be the perfect thing to use on somebody who was looking synthetic. And we did several tests with him, different designs of full face synthetic looking people, and we found that it kind of was a little bit too surrealistic. It didn't really reflect Jude's warmth and his friendliness, which we really wanted to have.
We were ready to get made up?
We're ready to get made up.
Right.
What we wound up doing is we wound up going to using a very simple prosthetic on his jawline. And in that case, then I had to go develop a look for him that would still give him that kind of plasticized look, but which would be flexible enough so that it wouldn't crack on his face. So through many, many tests, we finally found a configuration that we could actually use foam latex prosthetics in conjunction with a layering technique which I developed to create this plasticized look on his face. So I think it was very successful. His hair was also something that we wanted to make. We're thinking, well, if they can develop this robot, then they definitely are going to be able to give him human-looking hair. So we tested with wigs, and we found that we didn't like the look of that. So what I wound up doing was, after his hair was styled, I made a stencil that would go all around his hairline. And what I did was I airbrushed within his own hairline to make it look like perhaps underneath where they put the hair in, they had like a form that they sprayed on so they knew where to put the hair in. Kind of like almost like a doll.
Done.
That's all, folks.
This is an extremely ambitious, busy movie that is a completely artificial world that had to be designed and created and shot. This is without a doubt the most ambitious movie I have ever worked on in my career.
To create an artificial being has been the dream of man since the birth of science.
You're a machine.
I'm a boy. My name is David.